Most of us answer our front door without really putting much thought into it at all, unless you're me and you never answer the door unless you're expecting company. Middle of the day, your own neighborhood, a lot of people just open the door. 3 people in Alexandria, Virginia did exactly that between 2003 and 2014, and none of them walked away from it. This is the story of the Alexandria assassin. Most of the population, myself excluded, will answer the front door without thinking much about it at all. Somebody knocks, you walk over, let's see who it is. Middle of the day, your own neighborhood, nothing really feels off. It's probably your neighbor. You just open the door. 3 people in Alexandria, Virginia did exactly that, and all 3 of them are no longer with us. The man responsible was Charles Stanard Severance. And what's going to make this case stay lodged in your head is that his starting point looked completely ordinary. He was born September 25th, 1960 in Fairfax County, Virginia. His father was a retired Navy Admiral. He grew up in Oakton, attended Robinson Secondary School, and he earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Virginia in 1986. His dad was a Navy Admiral. He had a UVA engineering degree, and he grew up in suburban Northern Virginia without any obvious warning signs, right? This is not a serial killer origin story that you hear me tell all the time. That's kind of a LinkedIn profile and a firm handshake at the company picnic. That's what kind of vibes this is giving. After graduation, he landed engineering positions, including a role at Alexandria Wastewater Authority, and he couldn't hold a single one of them. Co-workers described constant conflicts with authority figures and a deeply held belief that Severance was simply smarter than everyone else around him. That belief isn't rare, honestly. Most people figure out how to keep it quiet during their performance reviews, though. Severance never got there. By 1988, his family had noticed something shifting in a way that was no longer subtle. He became withdrawn. He was paranoid and openly hostile toward institutions that had shaped him. During his 20s, he joined a religious cult and donated nearly everything he earned to that organization. He eventually left the group, but the framework of that group stayed with him. He was a righteous man surrounded by corrupt forces on all sides. That idea just needed somewhere new to go. He tried politics. In 1996, Severance ran for mayor of Alexandria and for Virginia's 8th Congressional District, then ran for mayor again in 2000. Every candidate forum, every public debate, this man walked in wearing a full-length black cloak and sunglasses. Every single time. This is Virginia in August, and Charles Severance is strolling into a public debate looking like a Victorian antagonist who got significantly lost somewhere around 1887, and apparently nobody at the League of Women Voters quite knew what the correct protocol was for that situation. So they just let him participate, looking like Count Chocula. His entire platform revolved around what he called the plague of psychotropic drugs being administered to children by a mental health system he described as state-sponsored terrorism. Ask him a question about the roads, the city budget, anything else at all, and he found a way to bring it back to child psychiatry within about 30 seconds. The Alexandria Police Department was alarmed enough by his behavior to assign an undercover officer to shadow his primary opponent during both campaigns. They're afraid he might do something to him. At a 1996 League of Women Voters forum, he grabbed an American flag and pointed its spiked metal finial, the pointy thing at the top, directly at Congressman Jim Moran before running out of the building. In 2000, he punched out a debate organizer, Rod Cuckrow, in the face for trying to enforce the time limits. He was assaulting event staff while actively running for elected office. Alexandria voters gave him around 8% of their vote. And I have questions about that, serious questions. But I'll reserve those for another time. In July of 1998, Severance met a woman named Tamala Nichols at a square dance in Northern Virginia. I'm sorry, square dance isn't funny, but it's kind of funny. By April of 1999, they had a son named Levi. The home they shared which Severance named Gunston Manor, was a Park Fairfax townhouse where he kept gas masks and weapons displayed throughout, prepared for an invasion that he was certain was eventually coming. Nichols left him in early 2000. The court awarded her full custody and denied Severance any visitation rights. In March 2001, a judge arranged one final supervised visit with his son Levi, held in a courtroom with uniformed sheriff's deputies present the entire time. He was not allowed to make physical contact with his son. Those deputies worked under Alexandria Sheriff James Dunning. In his diary afterward, Severance wrote, "Can you forgive someone for kidnapping your child? Can you murder someone for kidnapping your child?" Everyone connected to Alexandria's court system was now, in his mind, a legitimate target for what he called a family vendetta. On December 5, 2003, Nancy Dunning was home on West Mount Ida Avenue. She was a real estate agent and a deeply loved community fixture, someone her neighbors called the Queen of Del Rey for her years of neighborhood development work. She had just returned from Target when someone knocked at her front door. She answered it and was shot immediately multiple times with a .22 caliber handgun. Her purse and valuables sat untouched on the counter. Her husband, the sheriff, James Dunning, found her when she didn't show for their scheduled lunch. The case went cold fast. Standard protocol focuses heavily on the spouse at first. The husband did it. The boyfriend did it. Everyone knows that. And that focus stayed on Jim Dunning far longer than the evidence could support. Confirmation bias works like this in an investigation. You settle on a theory early and everything starts being filtered through that lens. Other possibilities quietly stop receiving that same attention. Jim Dunning was never formally charged, but he carried that cloud for the rest of his life. He died before his name was cleared. Severance was already gone. For close to 10 years, Severance drove across the country in a Ford Escort, spending extended time in Hagerstown and then Cumberland, Maryland, where he ran a makeshift hostel out of his home and charged travelers almost nothing to stay there. People from that time period remembered him as generous and calm. His family recognized something his Cumberland neighbors could not see, a man in steady decline who refused every form of help. During those years, he became consumed by the French and Indian War, specifically General Edward Braddock's failed campaigns, and framed his own life as a modern partisan fighting a corrupt ruling class. He filled 2 composition notebooks with what prosecutors would eventually call the Manifesto of Hate. Inside them, he had rewritten a New Testament parable into a step-by-step murder procedure. Knock, talk, enter, kill, exit, murder. He called this wisdom. He encouraged readers to practice on mannequins, wrote about assassinating the enforcement class, and described home killings as tomahawking the homestead. He was composing a murder manual while touring historical battlefields for inspiration, right? On November 11, 2013, Ronald Kirby, a 69-year-old transportation planner in Alexandria's Rosemont neighborhood, answered a knock at his front door and was then shot multiple times. His wallet and his wedding ring were still on him. A plumber arrived shortly after and reported seeing an older, gray-bearded man in the area, but the link to the decade-old Dunning case wasn't yet clear. On February 6, 2014, Ruthanne Lodato, a 59-year-old music teacher, answered a knock at her Ridge Road home and was killed. Her mother's caretaker, Janet Franco, was also shot during the attack but survived, and her description of the gunman was specific enough to matter. Older white male, balding, gray hair, gray beard, messy hair, dressed oddly for the weather. That description produced a composite sketch, and the sketch led investigators to Charles Severance. When Alexandria detectives left a business card at Severance's residence in March 2014, his response was to bicycle to the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C., dressed in a serape and a 3-cornered hat, and formally request the political asylum from the city of Alexandria. He asked Vladimir Putin's government to protect him from a Virginia family court. This man pedaled a bicycle to the Russian embassy dressed like a character from a different century entirely, walked in, and asked Russia to protect him from a domestic relations court in Northern Virginia. This was 2014. This happened on an actual day in real life. The Secret Service photographed him and clocked a distinctive yellow strap on his bicycle handlebars. He was, by the way, denied asylum, and he fled to Wheeling, West Virginia. On March 13, 2014, a Wheeling police officer spotted a bicycle with that same yellow strap outside the Ohio County Public Library, walked inside, and found Severance at a public computer terminal. He was arrested on a felony weapons charge, and murder charges followed shortly after. The trial moved to Fairfax County. Without the murder weapon, prosecutors built the case on Severance's own journals, ballistics connecting all three crime scenes, Janet Franco's eyewitness accounts, and surveillance footage. The defense argued his paranoid schizotypal personality disorder explained his writings without meeting the legal standard for insanity. The jury convicted him on everything: 2 life sentences without parole for the murders of Ruthanne Lodato and Ronald Kirby, plus a 3rd life sentence for the murder of Nancy Dunning. At sentencing, given a final chance to speak, Charles Severance delivered a theological lecture on 16th century Church of England doctrine regarding the legality of carrying weapons. Nothing resembling remorse. Commonwealth's attorney Brian Porter later wrote a book about the case called The Parable of the Knocker. The victim families became prominent gun violence prevention advocates. A stretch of Mount Vernon Avenue was named the Nancy Dunning Garden, and Jim Dunning's family received the clearance they had waited over a decade to hear. 3 people answered their doors on ordinary days in a city that had no idea someone had been working through a list for 11 years. In the end, what caught Charles Severance was a yellow strap on his bicycle and a trip to the Russian embassy in a tricorn hat that no government on earth was ever going to honor. Thanks for listening to 10 Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. Hello, I'm Joe, I'm the host, and here's an email. Subject: you've ruined other podcasts a little. Hey Joe, not even exaggerating, but your show has made me less patient with podcasts that spend 20 minutes warming up before they even get to the topic. Yours gets moving quickly without feeling robotic about it. Random question: what's something small that instantly makes you stop listening to a podcast? Lena in Richmond, Virginia. And I'll tell you, Lena, there are 2 things. First of all, it's bad audio. You don't need a fantastic microphone to do a podcast, but you need one that is right for your environment. If you buy the wrong microphone and you sit in the wrong room, it's going to sound hella echoey, and nobody wants to hear that. So that's the first one. And the second one is talking about yourself too much. People, for the most part, unless you're some big character, some big personality, they're checking out your podcast to hear the story that you've promised them, not hear you ramble on about, 8, 9, 10 other things about your life and all of that. I'm genuinely interested in the personal lives of different hosts of podcasts, but if you drone on about it too much, I check out. Thanks for listening, Lena, and thank you for the email. Hey, if you're a brand new listener, you listening to me right now, if this is one of your first times listening to this podcast, welcome. Be sure that you hit subscribe right now. Wherever you're listening, hit subscribe, and also go to 10minutemurder.com. You'll find links to where you can follow the show on social media. If you like the show, you've been listening for a while, I really appreciate you. Make sure you engage with the content on social media. Share this podcast with your friends and your family. That's how the show grows, is when you share it. You tell other people about 10 Minute Murder. And quickly, let me remind you, if you like longer episodes of podcasts where I don't ramble and talk about myself, but I talk a lot about the case, and sometimes my opinions on the stories, you can listen to my other podcast. It's called True Crime Blueprint. You can find a link for that in the episode notes of this episode. And that's going to do it. That's your episode for today. Thank you again for listening to 10 Minute Murder. See you next time.